I'm always interested in sort of what's next, and I've been thinking for a while about what comes after smartphones. What's the next platform? And I have an answer to propose. I could be wrong, but this is what I think is going to happen. And I want to very briefly kind of lay it out, and the short answer is I think the thing that's after smartphones are smart glasses. And they fit into this thing that I call the mirror world. And so the way I would frame this is that we're kind of like in the third phase of computation, and the first phase was this world of the mainframe computers that were not connected. And the second phase was when we connected them all together, and that's the kind of the era that we've been in. That's the internet era, that's the web, where you have all these things connected. But the phase I think we're going into next is the world in which computation surrounds us. It's ubiquitous computation. We're immersed in it. It's the immersive world. And that's not going to happen next year or even 5 years. This is another 20-year, several decade build out. This is the world in which we can see the real world plus the digital world. So it's a convergence of these two worlds that have not been very together. They've been kind of separate. You are in real life, and or else you're in kind of cyberspace or virtual reality. But this is a vision of combining these two worlds together so that the digital world is embedded in the real world. And that happens in various ways. This happens on the cloud, so that's where it is. It's also an extension of cloud computing, so that again, it's not just somewhere on some server farm somewhere. The cloud is actually around us. We are in the cloud. Okay, so it's also another way of thinking of this is if you can imagine all the chips in the world that are being connected together as if those chips were transistors in a mega computer. So we have a kind of a meta computer of all the computers that are connected, all the devices that have chips in them are making a very large scale computer that is the largest machine in the world. And that's the computer that this is going to run on. This is the platform. This is the hardware. So the hardware is this. You know, it's the idea that the computer is the network. The network is the computer. This is an extension of that, saying that we're going to actually run on the network. So mixed reality, the thing I'm talking about, augmented reality, mirror world, is this idea that you could take your normal vision with see-through glasses that you can see through, and that you would impose on it a presence, and you would feel that presence. So that's useful in many ways. You could use this to product design, where you could have a life-size, full-scale thing you're working on. You could also, it's actually fantastic, this vision of this augmented reality, this mixed reality, for education, because there are a lot of people in the world who don't learn very well reading screens or even reading paper. They learn by moving their hands. They learn by their body. It's much more kinetic. And this is really fantastic, where you can kind of walk through a molecule, take apart a heart, understand things by physically being there. And it's also fantastic for the future of the office, where this is Microsoft's vision, where you could have put on your clear glasses in your room, wherever you are, and you could have as many screens as you want. And these virtual screens actually work like a real screen. They're as clear, and you can manipulate them. And of course, up to 50% of the world's workers don't work in front of a desktop at all. They are out in the field, they're plumbers, they're warehouse people, drivers, and all these people would also benefit from having this thing. In fact, I will make the claim later on that most people in the world will first encounter this technology at work, long before it's in the home. So this was a vision done by a Japanese American as an art project, imagining the kind of worst case for this, which is that it's all ads and interruptions. But it gives you kind of a sense of the overlay of the two worlds merged together, where you can look at what's inside your refrigerator, you can look at the ingredients. Now he's suddenly interrupted by his social media And he's going to go back to working on the kitchen, seeing what's inside, the ingredients. You can pick up things and see as much as you want to see extra, annotations, sources. People can leave notes. He's on a bus now in Rio de Janeiro going down, trying to meet somebody. And you get, again, a sense of the overwhelmingness, but there's also a little bit of sense of how the entire world can be animated and annotated with this kind of technology. So the thing that's happening is the thing to keep in mind is that we're making a one-to-one map of the real world, so that everything in the real world, every place, everything, every structure, has a one-to-one, full-size, digital corresponding twin in this world. Okay, so, and it looks, it's photorealistic. It's what they call a digital twin. This is something that grew actually out of NASA. When NASA sent the spaceships and probes into space, they were very hard to work on to repair, so they made a twin, a physical twin, back on Earth that they could repair things with by trying them out. And that evolved into a digital twin, a simulation. And so when GE makes big structures like a power plant or a submarine, a tanker, they will actually, of course it's constructed in a certain sense in CAD, so there's a digital twin, but they actually will make it a working digital twin, a simulation at the full scale. And that idea can be extended to all the things we make. So eventually this house will have a digital twin that will represent it, and it will be semantically structured so that the windows know that there are frames and a door, and the knob on the door is related to the door, and the door is related to the frame. And so this is a one-to-one map of the entire world, of everything that's real. And in theory, you could, like in Google Earth, you could walk across or walk through this, and it would take you just as long to walk across the US on this virtual place as it would in the real world. And it's what I would call a mirror world, because it's mirroring the physical world. And it's visually realistic, sort of realistic. The textures will be there. It's completely volumetric, so you can walk around. So if this table was there, we could walk around and see it from all different angles. It would have a back and underneath as well. And it's shared in the sense that more than one person can be looking at it, the same thing, and seeing it from different angles. And it's persistent. If you left a note or something that you made in that world, it would persist, and someone else could come across it later on. So you can, in theory, leave behind messages as you were walking along this trail today, and someone in another time could come along and see your annotation about that, what the name of that plant was. The most important thing about this is that it's accessible by any device, not just the smart glasses. You can, in the beginning we were using phones to access it, or iPads, but most importantly, it's actually accessible by robots. So this is the world that robots see when they navigate through the world. This is the world that robots see when they're driving down your self-driving car. It's this world. It's the world of the real world plus this digital world melded together. That is what they see. And this is, in some senses, where we interact with robots and AIs. Because in order for this to work, these devices are in some ways actually looking at us, our behavior. They'll be looking back at our eyes to see where we glance. And so the way that we're going to interact with our digital assistants is, in some ways, is inside this mirror world, inside this augmented reality, is how we're going to interact with our digital assistant. That's how they know where we're looking or what we're doing. And so this mirror world is actually the location of our interactions with AI and robots. One of the things I talk about is this idea that we're going to be working with robots. The most effective teams that we know today are not AIs alone, they're not humans alone, they're teams where AIs cooperate with humans. That's called a centaur. The best chess player in the world today is not an AI, it's a team of AI plus humans. That's probably going to be true for Go as well. So this is the idea that we'll be talking with the AIs all the time, and this is the place that we're going to be meeting them. So everything we make is mirrored, it's in real time, it changes, it's like basically a simulation, and it's kinetic, it can move. There's these mirrors, these digital things, are not just static. They're actually like anything else we make. They can change with time, and there's a link between the two. So one of the most common, or the first apps that have been made is this idea that some of the furniture companies use is, let's say you wanted to buy a new table for this room. This room is being mapped. And the curious thing, like Google and the other initial platforms, it is being mapped as we use it. So the act of using this device, these smart glasses, actually improves it, because in order to place something in the real room here with these smart glasses, it actually has to map the room and then remap the room. And so the mapping is being done by using it. So you put these glasses on, you're mapping your living room, you're mapping this room here by looking through it, and it knows where to place the virtual sofa, and you can walk around it, and it feels like it's really there. And that's the weird thing about this kind of virtual reality and augmented reality, is that you don't see things, you feel things. There's some trick on our brain with the volumetric 3D that is sort of like the same trick that cinema does in making us believe that things move, right? So if you see a rocket on a movie going across the screen, there's no movement, right? It's just one still image after another. But we're convinced that there's movement because our brains are tricked, and that's the cinematic illusion. But we have a new illusion, that the presence of illusion, where we can be tricked in really believing that something is present when they have 3D volumetric view of it. And so we can actually see this sofa and really feel that it's there, and it'll look very, very close to actually the way it would look. And of course we can change the fabric or move it around, and that's actually something that's happening right now. So this is all connected together. It's one continuous thing, like cell phone coverage. Hopefully it's decentralized. We like that. And this is actually maybe the way you can kind of have all these decentralized parts put together and believe them, have them verified and authentic. Maybe this is a job for blockchain. It's been looking for a job. This is maybe you could do this. And so that's one idea. There's also a sense in which all the things that you see could actually, contain their prices. They can contain the financial information themselves. So rather than being separate somewhere, the digital things were actually part of their component, part of their ingredients would be the financial aspect of it. So the commerce was sort of run in a much different way, not separately on a different layer, but actually within the world itself. So it includes all things. When we talk about the Internet of Things, we're talking about this, and it's not that the Internet of Things that you're going to have like an IP address for every shoe, an IP address for every door handle, but this is constructed in a way where you're visualizing it. The AI is actually segmenting and saying this is a doorknob here and this is a window, and so it's actually connecting the entire world, even though it's connecting it in a different way than we normally think of it. Not like they each have an IP address, but it's semantically connected in the sense that it is part of this digital world, and we can find things that way. So it's all places, and it's a global platform. And the most compelling content of these worlds so far has always been not magical worlds, not amazing whales jumping into a gymnasium, but other people. When you have other people, that's generally the most compelling thing. We're still far from having the complete telepresence, although my trials and experiences show that even if it's not 100% photorealistic, even if it's kind of cartoony, if you have three things, if these telepresent avatars, if they have eye contact, if they have the voice of the person behind them, and they also capture the body movement of that person, you're totally convinced that they're there. Now you know that they're not there, but you feel like they're there. And so that's really important. And so that's coming along pretty fast too. And I think that this world would be the most social of all the social media. So the most important thing out of this is that what this does, it makes the entire rest of the world machine readable. Okay, so once you have a digitized version of the world, then you can actually apply algorithms and AI and stuff, and you can actually read it. You can do stuff with it, just like we digitize the world of information, then we can kind of read it, and with Facebook and WeChat, we digitize human relationships and we can do stuff with it. Now we're going to digitize the rest of the world and we can make it machine readable. We can apply algorithms to it and do all the all the great things and all the terrible things that we can with algorithms. So it makes the entire world machine readable, and that is the big, huge advance. That's the source of the 10,000 new startups and the new products and services that we're going to get from this, is that this suddenly makes the entire built world, particularly, machine readable. So I'm not sure we can go through this, who wins, but I would say AI is electricity that makes this thing work. There is no mirror world without cheap, ubiquitous AI. Right, Richard? So, yeah. So you can't map things. You don't know where anything is. Nothing really works unless there is cheap, ubiquitous AI behind it. Secondly, this is a world of big data. All right, and I have to say that the amount of data being generated by this, where you're in this world, your movements are being captured in order to navigate through your avatars, everything. It is basically a total surveillance state, right? So, and that means it's the biggest data. And so far, all the biggest companies in the world have had the biggest data. If you look at the biggest companies in the world, they have lots of big data. The companies that run this stuff will have the biggest data, and they will become basically the largest companies of the world. I want to, open prevails. There'll be natural monopolies. That's just how networks work. There'll be a couple big companies that will probably be dominant. And I think most people are going to see this first at work, long before they see it at home. Right now, Google Glass didn't die. Google Glass has been revived, and it's very popular. People who work in warehouses and stuff. And a lot of those people who have these versions, early versions, say they won't give them up. They find them so useful. Even something simple, they're not really true smart glasses, they're just and a little bit of layer, but even that's enough to make their jobs much easier. And we have to develop a whole new set of interfaces for this. The classical interface for the screen, which is menus and windows, just doesn't work in 3 dimensions, and so we need a whole new set of conventions, protocols, interface design, and that's waiting for some genius here to invent it. And I think there are visual gestures that from the Tom Cruise movie that I worked on here, and so we just need another whole interface for this. So we become people of the screen. Let me just end by saying that I can tell I'm very, very excited. I think this is still very early. Not a lot of this exists yet, but I'm pretty sure that this is what's going to be coming after smartphones. There are Magic Leap and a couple other people who make these smart glasses. I've seen some in China. They're basically Magic Leap rip-offs, but they're very, very good. They're very, very nimble and quick, and I think that my bet is that this is what comes after smartphones. So thank you. Yeah.
All right, we'll have time for 2 questions.
Yeah, so 2 questions. I'll just close my eyes.
Just yell it.
Yeah, right there.
So we notice right now in traditional social media that every generation or so picks a couple of new networks.
Yeah.
So old people are on Facebook, younger people are on Instagram. How do you think that kind of rollover is going to work in this world?
So you want me to repeat the question? Yeah, so old people are on Facebook, young people always kind of adopt a new platform, new social media. How will this work? So let me just answer your question a little differently. All the big dominant companies right now, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, Google, they all believe that they're going to be the ones to rule this platform because they're closest to it. Google has Google Earth, etc. History would suggest that none of them are going to be the dominant players, that whoever runs this is most likely going to be a startup that does not even exist today. And I think that will become the new thing that all the young people will go on to in 5 to 10 years. It'll be a completely new platform built from the ground up. Maybe we can learn from some of the mistakes that we made in the last platform. So yes, I think this would be the natural migration to have young people move on it, and it's not going to be from any of the mainland or the mainline dominant players right now today. That's my bet. So, okay, over there, I can see you standing up. Yeah.
So I'd argue that this is going to happen a lot faster than we think, and I love the article that you did. There's also something I've observed that the amount of data that can be collected on an individual increases exponentially each year. It follows Moore's law. So you've seen a lot of interesting things. What is your advice to the world to make sure that we don't end up like a surveillance state and end up like a place we want to live?
So it's a question about big data. How do we prevent a surveillance state from big data? So I think that total information in our lives is inevitable. What I don't think is inevitable is how it's done. And so I start with the idea that all of us, all humans, we evolved over 1 million years where basically we had no privacy at all. We lived in clans and everybody knew everything about each other. And that's that was our natural state. So I think what we're uncomfortable with is the asymmetry in information. Like back then, I knew everything about you, you knew everything about me, but it was symmetrical and there was some benefit for that. The problem right now is asymmetrical. So they know about me, and I don't know anything about them, and they know about everybody else, and nobody knows about them, and we don't know what they do with it, or we don't have any control of it. It's not accountable to us. So what we want to actually do is try to restore some of the symmetry in that relationship, where 2 things or 3 things happen. One is that we know as much about who knows about us as they know about us, and secondly, we can hold them accountable for whether it's correct or what they do with it, and third, we get direct benefit from that, meaning that we even get payment, or we get many kinds of benefits from that exchange, which we don't right now. The benefits are all one-sided too. So I think that if we can restore some of that symmetry, then we will feel more comfortable with that. And that's my theory. So thank you for your attention, and I know I really appreciate being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.